Today, let's take a look at the United States. It has a new problem on its hands. Russia has now officially called the United States a state enemy. Good afternoon, this is the ambassador. With me, your ambassador, Jennifer Macau. Now, as we continue with our story, Russia has officially called the United States the enemy of the nation, and this came from the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov. Dmitry Peskov was able to call the United States the state's enemy, according to the Russia reports. And as we check, now as we continue with Russia, the United States quagmire, and I'm quoting from the Dmitry Peskov Kremlin spokesperson, and this is what he said. I quote and unquote, "And we are an enemy for a country which is much likely are for us." That was the Kremlin spokesperson's statement. And this is the first time they said enemy. Because it's not something to be said lightly, not know that Washington and Moscow have never had eye to eye. They have been on the opposite sides in a number of conflicts, most recently in Ukraine. But through 2 years of the Ukraine war in Moscow, Moscow went out of its way to avoid calling the United States an enemy state. Now let's take a look at the Peskov again. Barely 3 months ago, he said that the U.S. was not the enemy. The Russia did not have any anti-American sentiments, but that has changed now. And why? Perhaps because of the last week escalation. Last week, the United States gave Ukraine a green light to strike Russian territory using American weapons, and Ukraine has already begun doing so. They are using American weapons to strike inside Russia, and Russia is furious, and Putin says Ukraine is striking Russian territory with the help of the Western specialists.
The missile strikes against Russia are done by the Western specialists. We have no illusions about that. What must we do in response? First of all, we will improve our air defense systems to destroy the missiles. Secondly, we think that if someone thinks it is possible to supply such weapons to a combat zone to strike at our territory and create problems for us, why do we not have the right to supply our weapons of the same class to those regions of the world where there will be strikes on the sensitive facilities of those countries that are doing this against Russia?
You heard what he said. Basically, Putin has threatened to turn the tables, so to send the Russian weapons to the Western enemies, long-range weapons that could strike sensitive facilities in the West. And this means that the Western enemies could get the ability to strike them at will. It would be a security nightmare for the Western nations that are helping Ukraine. Listen in.
In the end, if we see that these countries become involved in a war against us, what they are doing makes them directly involved in a war against the Russian Federation, we reserve the right to act the same way. Overall, it leads to some serious problems.
That what puts in threat to the U.S., and it isn't just a contract with that, he's also going for a show of force. Russia is sending a combat of vessels to the Caribbean Sea, to the Americans' doorstep. Russia will participate in the naval exercises in the Caribbean along with Cuba and possibly Venezuela. Russian aircraft also may be deployed in the region and won't stop there. And here is what the United officials have said, and I'm quoting and quoting. We anticipate that this summer, Russia will conduct heightened naval aircraft activity near the United States. And these actions will culminate in global Russian naval exercise this fall. Now, Russia regularly conducts drills in the American backyard, but this time they are expected to be quote-unquote heightened, and the drills will continue for weeks and not in months. This is clearly a muscle flexing. Russia wants to show that even while it is busy with Ukraine, it has firepower to spare. And that is that it can hurt an enemy anywhere, and the word and the old of that is posturing evocative of the different era of this Cold War. This reminds us when Russia and the United States were constantly in the brink of war, and the rest of the U.S. are hoping that we are not caught in the nuclear fallout. The world does not need to go back to the Cold Era. Russia and the West can need to de-escalate and let the cooler heads prevail. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov concluded his African tour with a working visit to Chad on Wednesday, June 5th. A tour that included stops in the Guinea, the Republic of Congo, and Burkina Faso. During his visit to Chad, Lavrov met with Chadian counterpart Abraham Koulamala and the president of Mahamat, Idris Deby Itno. Sergei underlined that Russia's relations with the Chad were not directed against other countries, including France, which considered the regions of its sphere of influence. He further guaranteed that Russia's friendship with Chad would not affect its relations with France in any way, stating that France had an approach where countries were either with them or against them. Here is the full report.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov landed in N'Djamena, Chad on Wednesday, June 5th, where he was wrapping up an African tour which included stops to Guinea, the Republic of Congo, and Burkina Faso. During his working visit, the Russian minister met with his Chadian counterpart Abraham Koulamala, and on the war on Ukraine, he said the West was not concerned about peace. For decades, Central Africa and Western Africa have been considered as spheres of influence for France. Sergei Lavrov emphasized that Russia's relations with Chad are not directed against other countries in any way. The Federation's outreach to Africa in recent years has contributed to the complex geopolitical field on the continent, with observers dubbing this battle of influence as the battle for Africa. Political analyst Baba Dakono believed the security situation in the Sahel region has prompted changes in the region. Thomas Musyoki, GBS News.
At least 2 tornadoes struck South Africa KwaZulu-Natal province, the country's second most populous, on Monday, June 4th, leaving a trail of destruction, local authorities confirming on Tuesday that 11 people were killed and over 55 injured as a result of the severe weather. The provincial government reported of at least 120 people being displaced, while 3 temporary shelters had been built to provide humanitarian aid to the affected families. Here is more.
When I woke up, I couldn't open the door because of the corrugated iron sheet blocking the door from the outside. When I pulled the sheet metal, I saw this strong whirlwind with loud thunder and heavy rain. As I was inside my house, it was raining over me. The tornado in the western KwaZulu-Natal region occurred near the cities of Newcastle and Utrecht. A second, more massive, took place around Tongaat and moved towards the coast at Westbrook and Balito, leaving more extensive damage. I didn't witness the tornado, but my children told me what had happened since they were home. They told me that they saw strong wind that was rotating. They covered themselves with blankets, trying to shield themselves from the strong winds. They managed to get out of the house with the assistance of their brother. The provincial government said that at least 120 people have been displaced. 3 temporary shelters have been established where the affected families are receiving humanitarian aid. Sylvia Makori, GBS News.
Now moving on to Uganda, beekeeping is thriving in Uganda, with the country producing between 100,000 and 200,000 metric tons of honey annually. According to the Uganda Investment Authority, the growing demand suggests significant potential for further expansion, with the Uganda Investment Authority highlighting on the need to boost production volumes and protect declining bee population. Here is more on this side.
Sadra Ejang, a bee farmer and honey entrepreneur, began keeping bees as a hobby, inspired by her grandmother's backyard beehives.
Mother had hives in her backyard. So really, just before we started, the only experience I had with honey was eating it from comb as a child.
For nearly a decade, Ejang has turned her passion into a profitable business. Her brand, Asali Wamoyo, has become a staple on store shelves.
But this year, we are pulling up greatly as we become more commercial. That means we are really catering for everybody. We have the higher end customers, we have the lower end customers, we're looking at hotels and restaurants. We basically have everybody covered in honey.
Ejang's business isn't limited to honey. She also produces beeswax, medicinal products, and honey-based beauty items. Despite the successes, challenges remain. The Uganda Investment Authority highlights the needs to boost production volumes and protect the declining bee population. Antonio Quirido, the FAO representative in Uganda, emphasizes.
As we developed, it is important that we are also conscious of the role that the bees play in the agri-food system and adopt practice that really does not kill them, but also foster their development because they are fundamental.
Sadra Ejang's ambition is clear. The beekeeping sector in Uganda holds promise, and with entrepreneurs like Ejang leading the way, the future looks sweet. Paris Kego, GBS News.
That's a big up coming from Uganda. Now moving on to the Israeli. The Israeli settlers in the West Bank have been hit with international sanctions over allegations of attacks and harassment against the Palestinians. The sanctions have been made with a defiance from the Israeli government, with Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich vowing to intervene on behalf of the sanctioned settlers. Palestinians in the region have also expressed fear and frustration over the settler violence and the land seizures, claiming that Israeli government was not doing enough to stop the settlers at the sanctions and were not sufficient to deter them. However, the Israeli government has continued support to the settlers, and the situation still continues to be tense. Here is more.
In the West Bank, Israeli settlers continue expanding on Palestinian hilltops despite international sanctions. Figures like Elisha Yered, a hilltop youth member, remain active. He has set up several outposts near Maskiot, undeterred by the European Union and UK sanctions. Some settlers like Yunon Levy in the South Hebron Hills face financial freezes. However, community support and political backing quickly restored their access to funds. Far-right officials, including Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, have promised to aid those affected.
Not there. The state is there in order to help the settlers, in order to shatter any sense of the rule of law.
Palestinians are losing land and facing more violence due to the expanding Israeli settlements. Since the Gaza war, unauthorized land grabs in the West Bank have surged. These outposts report constant fear and harassment. Settlement watchdog Kerem Navot notes that settlers use farming outposts to take more land aggressively. With minimal government intervention, Palestinians are losing significant parts of their homes and livelihoods.
Today, renewing calls for an end to the sharp rise in deadly violence in the occupied West Bank since the 7th of October.
As the West Bank conflict deepens, settlers push forward despite sanctions, while Palestinians see their land and security eroded. The focus on Gaza overshadows these critical developments, highlighting the enduring challenges to peace in the region. Alex Mwangi, GBS News.
Famine in Sudan has been imminent through the UN humanitarian warning. If agencies continue to be prevented from providing relief, the situation will be dire. In a bleak assessment of the terrible situation in Sudan, where conflict is in its second year, the heads of the 19 global humanitarian organizations issued an alert that further obstacles to providing aid rapidly at a scale would mean more death of the people. The sum of the 18 million people in the country are already actively hungry, while 3.6 million children are actively malnourished, according to the OCHA spokesperson's statement. Here is more.
19 global humanitarian organizations, including 12 UN agencies, today warned that if they continue to be prevented from providing aid in Sudan rapidly and at scale, a famine will likely take hold in large parts of the country. More people will flee to neighboring countries, children will succumb to disease and malnutrition, and women and girls will face even greater suffering and dangers. Movements across country lines to parts of Khartoum, Darfur, Al Jazeera and Kordofan have been cut off since mid-December. In March and April of this year, nearly 860,000 people were denied humanitarian aid in these areas. The closure in February of the Adre border crossing from Chad to western Darfur has reduced aid delivery in Darfur to a trickle. We have 18 million people who are acutely hungry, and as I mentioned, 3.6 million children who are acutely malnourished. And acute malnourishment is really dangerous in the sense that I think the number is that they are 10 to 11 times more likely to die than children who are not acutely malnourished. We of course want these generals to find a way to solve their differences, not by violence that kills, maims, rapes, whatnot, hundreds of thousands of people in Sudan, but do it in another way.
And that international news brings us to our first break. Next we talk about the Sudan famine risk and the Haiti condition. Also, the United States President Joe Biden stated, "You must remember it very well." That was during the veteran ceremony at with the French President Emmanuel Macron, that they were able to hear him talk more about it. And there's no countdown to war. That was the NATO Stoltenberg reiterating during the questioning about the class of sending troops in Ukraine. And we also get to see about the New Guterres climate change and what is it all about. We have this and more lined up for you shortly after the break. Stay tuned with us. You are still watching the Ambassador GBS Global, and we are glad to have you join us today. Now moving on, in several communities in Gombe State, Nigeria, UNICEF has been training thousands of women to boost their families' nutrient intake and combat chronic malnutrition. The program focuses on home gardening, where families grow tubers and grain, reducing their reliance on expensive food and elevating malnutrition, particularly among children. Malnutrition can weaken the immune system over time and increase the risk of death from other diseases. In Nigeria, many malnourished children do not even reach hospitals before dying due to the lack of funds for the treatment and the inadequate healthcare facilities in the remote areas. Malnutrition is a significant issue in Africa, with over 1 billion people affected, mainly due to the conflict, climate crisis, and the rising food prices. The continent accounts for 1/3 of the global burdens and 20 of the most affected countries, according to the UN estimates. Here is more.
I have my grandson. He was malnourished and suffered from kwashiorkor. I took him to a health facility and they gave me some herbs. And when they ran out, there was nowhere to get another. When we were waiting, my grandson was still very sick. Then UNICEF came and saw his condition. They taught me how to prepare food with sweet potatoes and soybeans so that he will not have diarrhea. They taught us how to prepare nutritious food with vitamins.
Exclusive breastfeeding rate in Gombe State is 24%. Only 25% of children receive minimum acceptable diet, and stunting rate is 52%. That means 1 in 2 children in Gombe State is stunted, and children 6 to 23 months are experiencing chronic food poverty. This informed the decision for UNICEF to implement the nutrition
situation in Haiti continues to deteriorate with a record number of people facing extreme food insecurity. Jean-Martin Bauer, country director for the World Food Program, WFP, in Haiti, briefed the press virtually on Wednesday from Port-au-Prince on the crisis. According to the Haitian government, nearly 5 million people in Haiti are extremely food insecure, with 1.6 million classified as facing emergency food insecurity conditions. This is the highest number since the 2010 earthquake. Over 360 Haitians have been displaced, with over 100,000 leaving Port-au-Prince in March alone. This has exacerbated the crisis, particularly in south of the country with limited infrastructure. Jean-Martin Bauer highlighted on the need for the continued attention and support for Haiti, strengthening that the crisis was not just a humanitarian issue, but also political and an economic one, requiring a comprehensive response. Here is more.
The government, we now have 5 million people in Haiti that are acutely food insecure, of which 1.6 million are classified as facing emergency food insecurity conditions. These are the highest numbers on record. These are the highest numbers we've had since the 2010 earthquake. We've been able to provide over 1 million hot meals to people on the move in Haiti since the start of the year. We're very proud of having been able to help more than 100,000 people. Humanitarians have been trying to do their best to respond to the crisis. The Hot Meals program that WFP is running is one of the examples of that. Right now, we've been able to use the stocks that we placed in position in Port-au-Prince ahead of the crisis, but those have been running low. We're optimistic that with the reopening of the port, we'll be able to import commodities from outside and bring them to Port-au-Prince to sustain these programs. But the level of stocks for other humanitarian actors has been quite low, and we know that the health sector has been quite affected by the low stocks available in Port-au-Prince.
President Joe Biden, along with French President Emmanuel Macron and other world leaders, gathered to honor the sacrifice of Allied forces who fought against Nazi Germany during the World War II, as they commemorated 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings in Normandy. The historic invasion marked the beginning of a campaign that ultimately led to the Allied defeat of the Nazi Germany through the bravery of the selflessness of those who fought for freedom and democracy. President Joe Biden praised the astounding courage of the troops who fought on the D-Day, highlighting on the importance of alliances in ensuring security as well as honoring the sacrifices made by American veterans. French President Macron praised American veterans, stating that they left everything behind and took the risk, also acknowledging the veterans for their sacrifices which helped liberate Europe from the Nazi occupation. Here is more.
You helped defeat what Churchill called a monstrous tyranny never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalog of human crime. And you laid the foundation for a more just, free, and decent world. Together with our allies, we built peace out of war, a hard-headed peace, a peace renewed by constant commitment, a peace forged by the generation that won the bloodiest war in human history. We still seek a world where aggression is sin, where human rights are sacred, and where all people can live in freedom. And so we must rally again.
There were 160,000 Allied troops descending on Normandy. Many, to state the obvious, never came home. Many survived that long stay, kept on fighting for months until victory was finally won. And a few, a notable band of brothers, are heroes today. America has invested in our alliances and forged new ones, not simply out of altruism, but out of our own self-interest as well. America's unique ability to bring countries together is an undeniable source of our strength and our power. Isolation was not the answer 80 years ago, and and is not the answer today. These heroes fought against 80 years ago. They never fade. Aggression and greed, the desire to dominate and control, to change borders by...
In a significant diplomatic statement, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg emphasized that there were no plans to deploy NATO troops in Ukraine, and the assurance that came during a recent meeting with the Finnish President Sauli Niinistö. The Secretary General classified that NATO position, stressing the alliance was focused on supporting Ukraine through other means rather than directly military involvement, a stance that highlighted NATO's commitment to stability while avoiding escalation. Stoltenberg remarks aims to ease tensions amid ongoing regional instability. Here is more.
To you, we see ourselves very much as a security provider, not a security consumer in this region. We want to be a very reliable ally. We put our money where our mouth is when it comes to capability. We fully realize the responsibility that we have as a new ally in the sense that we have just doubled NATO's border with Russia, and that comes with a heavy responsibility. We will do our part in the defense of the alliance based on a 360 approach. So we're not only looking to the east, we also look to the west, south, and north. NATO has no plans to deploy forces to Ukraine, and then we are an ally that spends 2% of GDP on defense. So we really welcome the fact that Finland now is a full member of the alliance, and we also welcome the fact that we are moving very well on integrating Finland into all the NATO structures, the NATO defense plans, and everything that we do together. Then we also welcome the many Finnish contributions to NATO missions and operations. Just actually this week we started to do the air policing out of Romania. Finland plays a key role in providing support.
Tens of thousands of children in Afghanistan are facing dire circumstances in the aftermath of devastating flash floods with the northern provinces of Baghlan and Badakhshan, as well as the western province of Ghor, bearing the brunt of the impact. The recent floods, which claim nearly 350 lives, including at least a dozen children, have left over 7,800 homes damaged or destroyed, displacing more than 5,000 families. Responding to the crisis, UNICEF has launched a comprehensive relief effort to aid affected communities. Afghanistan, which ranks 15th on the UNICEF's Children Climate Risk, that is the index, faces increasing climate-related challenges, and despite being among the least responsible for the greenhouse gas emission globally, moving forward, the international community must redouble its efforts to address the root causes of climate change and support countries like Afghanistan in building resilience to the future disasters. And that international news brings us to the end of Ambassador. GBS Global. It's been a pleasure having you on board, joining us to the end. Here at the Ambassador, we continue to bring you the latest updates and the global developments as you keep it locked with us. I've been your Ambassador, Jennifer Macau, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Ambassador on Monday at 1 p.m. And may you all have a superb and the most beautiful and a wonderful afternoon and a splendid weekend ahead. Stay safe.